Battlefield 2042 was the worst game of 2021, hands down. It was the most broken, buggy mess I played, and it's not that surprising because EA is constantly creating broken games, then they expect people to pay full price for them. And after it launched in such a terrible state, people were furious. Platforms like Steam were giving extended returns. They were trying to make people happy and not make them even more angry than they already were. But we never knew what the sales were until now because EA admitted that they were absolutely abysmal. I have a few things to show off, but before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month or supporting the channel via YouTube memberships. All of the links are in the description, and of course, I do really appreciate all of the support. So I wanted to start off with this Bounding into Comics article. It says EA admits that Battlefield 2042 did not meet expectations and sales were disappointing. This isn't that surprising to hear. I personally was really excited for Battlefield 2042. I was hoping it was going to be a good game, and unfortunately, it was a nightmare. Let's be honest. It didn't meet my expectations. It didn't meet most people's expectations. And a lot of individuals were thinking this could have been the next big FPS. We were needing something new, something fresh. Battlefield, of course, is really beloved. It's a great franchise. And unfortunately, it just wasn't good. It says EA has admitted that Battlefield 2042 did not meet expectations and its sales were disappointing. Not very surprising. It says 2 weeks ago, freelance journalist and noted EA leaker Tom Henderson claimed that EA was considering making Battlefield 2042's Portal mode free to play amid poor sales, which he proposed was a sign that EA considered the game a flop. I know a lot of people were very angry at this, that only a couple months after release they'd go free to play, but the problem is that their player numbers must be terrible. I'm going to show the Steam charts in a few moments, which are bad, but when a game is dying, the only thing that you can really do is make it free to play. They put a lot of work into it, even though it doesn't really seem like it when you play the actual game, but they don't want all of those months and years to go to complete waste and only have 2 to 3 to 4,000 people playing it. So they'd rather go free to play, be able to listen to player feedback, maybe change things, fix bugs and glitches, and go from there. Unfortunately, I just think that Battlefield 2042 was such a disaster, no one's going to give it a chance. I know myself personally, I probably wouldn't give it another chance even if it went free to play. I was really disappointed, and I very rarely return games, but I did with 2042. I tried to stream it, and it was a disaster. It was stuttery, I couldn't move around properly, there were tons of graphical problems, bugs and glitches, falling through the ground. It was crazy. I thought that it was going to be a good game. The natural disasters and tornadoes and fires and lightning sounded extreme but really cool, and it was just awful, and I was disappointed like most people were. Despite this, one financial analyst who spoke to Henderson said they expected EA to beat around the bush over Battlefield 2042's during their then upcoming February 1st financial call, speculating that the developer would claim that while they were disappointed in the game's launch, they had faith in its live service model, a retread of the same rhetoric deployed when Battlefield 5 underperformed. Of course, talking about live service models, they almost never work. Unfortunately, it's just the way that it is. We give companies chance after chance to make good games and to try to revive franchises and try to do amazing things, but unfortunately we get content like Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042. Battlefield 5 was not as bad as 2042 when it comes to the actual gameplay, the technical difficulties, but it still underperformed. That very earnings call has since vindicated Henderson, as during its presentation, the leaker noted that there's no mention of Battlefield 2042 in their earnings slides. The slide instead focused on the company's engagement highlights, such as how many pings were placed in Apex Legends or hours of the Sims series were played. Of course, they want to talk about the positive and they don't want to focus on the negative. They don't want to scare investors. But games like Apex Legends and the Sims are still really big, let's be honest. Lots of new players to Apex Legends this year. They were really happy with the growth that the game saw, and they want to focus on the positive in these things. Should they focus on the negative too? I believe yes. I do think it's important to recognize the problems that are going on with your company and recognize the bad content you're putting out, but they don't really care. The EA chief executive officer did later admit, though, we did have a challenge in Q3 as the launch of Battlefield 2042 did not meet expectations. It was always an ambitious game, and our team's push to innovate across many dimensions, including massive scale and 128 player matches, new modes, new dynamic gameplay, and more. Developing this game with our teams working from home for nearly 2 years ultimately proved to be challenging, and I completely understand that this game was massive. They were trying to think outside the box. They were trying to make it as dynamic as possible with new ideas. Unfortunately, it just didn't pay off, and while I do praise them for their ideas, their innovation, their creativity, as a consumer who's paying $60 for new games and sometimes $70, it just wasn't good enough. It says he continued through our processes for testing and preparation. We believe the experience was ready to be put into our players' hands. I truly and genuinely do not know how the actual fuck they thought that this was good enough. It was terrible in every single way. And I think it's hilarious when we see executive officers talk about, oh, we thought it was good enough. We thought people were going to like it. They basically just want us to shut up and consume the next product, and it didn't work with 2042, and they hate that. Despite EA's expectations of strong growth in FY 2023, Chief Financial Officer Blake Jorgensen later reiterated that sales of Battlefield 2042 were disappointing, but informed listeners that this stumble was offset by a strong showing from FIFA and continued strength from Apex and our other franchises. So what they're doing is basically trying to say, hey, we have all of these games that are doing really good, like FIFA and Apex, but unfortunately this game that we spent years on failed. It was really disappointing. They're trying to kind of play it off like, we tried something new, people just didn't like it. Unfortunately, we just needed more time with it. Oh, the pandemic caused a lot of issues in development. They're using every excuse in the book to get people to feel bad for them almost. We launched with strong stability, however, as more players experienced the full game, it became clear that we are up and unanticipated performance issues that we would need to address. Some of the design choices we made with the game also did not resonate with everyone in our community, and we are fully committed to realizing the full potential of this game and fully committed to our Battlefield fans. And unfortunately for EA, Battlefield 2042 doesn't have many fans anymore. This is just the Steam player numbers. Of course, other platforms might be higher, they might even be lower, but looking at the Battlefield 2042 Steam charts, there is barely anyone playing this game. The all-time peak was 104,000 users. I was probably part of those users. I bought it, played it launch day, and it just was a mess, but the past 24-hour peak was only at 5,105 players, and currently playing are 4,411 users. This game was a massive disappointment, and I really don't think that this game is salvageable. I'm going to be honest. Usually I try to be hopeful and positive and say, try to fix the game, maybe it'll fix it, but it was the worst game of 2021, and I don't think a lot of those players who initially purchased it are going to come back. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.